Okay, so thanks everyone for tuning in. And the reason why I thought I'll do this is because I don't know about you, but I find it immensely annoying that I can't really keep track of all the different rules. Oh, Kelly tells me that the video is working, but I don't get to see my own feedback, so that's fine. We'll just live with it. So yes, about the rules. So they keep changing, right? Like at first we were sold the idea that we'll just have to bear the circuit breaker for a short period of time. And once we're done with the circuit breaker, we get to live lives as per normal. So just deal with the inconvenience for a short while. But now we've got phase one of the reopening. And I was super annoyed just trying to figure out what is it that we can actually do in phase one that we can't actually do during the circuit breaker period. So without further ado, let's talk about the 10 things that we can actually do now after the circuit breaker ends. Okay, number one, external childcare is now going to be allowed. So this will come either as an amazing piece of news for the parents among us, or for the non-parents among us, it will be meh, whatever. But for the parents, it's a big deal, and take it from me, alright? And I'm not just talking about external childcare providers. From 2nd June tomorrow onwards, grandparents will be allowed to take care of their grandchildren as well. So that's a big deal for those of us who are used to getting that kind of support from our grandparents. But there's a catch, as always. So let's talk about the catch for grandparents first. So first of all, you are only allowed to drop off your kids at their grandparents' house. In other words, if your existing arrangement is for your grandparents, or rather for your children's grandparents, to come over to your place to take care of the kid, and then they go home at the end of the day, that's not allowed. And the reason I know this is because I called up MOH to check this out. So I called MOH and I asked them, look, it's really troublesome. Can we please have an exception? Can we appeal? Both my wife and I are working full time, and if the grandparents drive over and play with the kid and then go home, they are not taking public transport, they are not being exposed to any risk of the virus outside, right? Answer, nope. Sorry, no go. You can only drop off the kids at the grandparents' house. So it's not a perfect solution because you still need to find time in your workday to drop off your kid or kids, but better than nothing. Okay, for those of us who have children in preschool, okay, again, there's a catch, which is not all the preschools are going to open immediately. So the opening is going to be staggered. So you are going to have your K1 and K2 kids first, the bigger kids first. From 8 June onwards, the N1, Nursery 1 and Nursery 2 kids will get to go back to school. And from 10 June, they will open up infant care and playgroups. So for the children, sorry, for the parents with the young children, you have to hang in there a bit longer, all right? Or enlist the grandparent support. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, for students, back to school. So sorry, you had your school holidays already. Too bad they're over and you are going back to school. I'm not sure whether it's a good thing for the kids out there, rather the students out there, to be finally free of the confines of home. But as usual, there's a catch. First of all, home-based learning, that thing that all parents dread, is still happening. So you're still going to have home-based learning for 1 week out of 2 weeks. So for that 1 week, productivity is still going to drop like mad for parents. I'm sorry, you know it, I know it, can't be helped. And that's for primary and secondary school students. And one other thing, going back to school is compulsory, which means as a parent, if you think that your children are at risk of catching the virus if they turn up in if they turn up in school, and you decide that you don't really want them to go back to school, I'm sorry, you do not have a choice in the matter. All right, that's the second point. Third point, there will be more healthcare services which are open. Okay, and this includes traditional medicine. Now, there's no real point in me giving you the full list of healthcare treatments that will now be allowed. You should probably call up the clinic or the GP or the hospital that you're used to getting your healthcare services at and find out whether you can come down and book an appointment, because that's what you'll be doing under normal circumstances anyway. But one thing to note, it seems like purely aesthetics treatments like Botox and fillers, for example, would not be allowed, which it leads to this funny contradiction. And I'll come back to that contradiction later on, all right? When we go down the list. So that's number 3. Okay, number 4. For those of you who need government services and are bemoaning the fact that lots of the public service counters have been closed, some public service counters are going to be reopening. For example, those at the HDB, at CPF, and MOM. But it's going to be by appointment only. So, again, please call them up before you turn up. Otherwise, you are going to get turned away. Don't make it a wasted trip. Number 5, and this is potentially a biggie for some of you. Now, for those of you who are new homeowners and you had started home renovation work before the circuit breaker period began, and now that the circuit breaker period is over, the good news is the home renovation work can continue. But keyword being continue. It seems like BCA is not going to be allowing applications for new home renovation work. So apparently what I've been hearing on the ground is that your contractor would need to provide evidence to BCA, for example in the form of photographs, that the renovation work you want to do is actually a continuation or renovation that actually started before the circuit breaker. So I've got some friends who are living in the empty shell right now and they want to start renovation work. You know who you are. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen for a while more. Okay. There's one other thing though, in relation to home renovation, aircon servicing would also be allowed now. So if you're like me and you've been suffering from the hot weather, well, maybe not so much today because it was rainy. You do want to get your air conditioning service so that it doesn't KO while you continue working from home. Number 6, and this is good news for some of our friends who are in the property or insurance line. So for property and insurance agents, you can now meet clients, but again, there's a catch. First of all, you are only allowed to meet them if you are legally required to do so to complete a transaction, which means you can't call your clients out just for coffee, just to hang out, or even to explain policy documents to them. It's got to be legally required to complete the transaction. So you still have to continue communicating with them and reaching out to them through your usual video or digital mediums. So that's got to continue. And when you do meet them to complete the transactions, it's got to be at your offices, your insurance or your property company's offices. You can't be going to your client's house, which I know is a value-added service that many of you provide. You can't do that, unfortunately. You've got to get them to come down to your offices. So that was number 6. Number 7, some religious activities will be allowed. Again, I encourage you to check up on the relevant rules that apply to your place of worship. Call them ahead if necessary. But the long story short is that we will be allowed to worship at places of worship in small groups within the same household. So again, you can't be using this as an excuse to start hanging out with your relatives or your friends, meeting in the church or the temple or what have you. It's got to be within the same household and you've got to keep to the same household. So that hasn't changed. So that's number 7. Number 8. Okay, I don't know about all of you, but I am really suffering from the fact that I haven't been able to take a proper holiday for yonks, right? Well, the bad news, or rather the good news, is that essential travel will be allowed. But the bad news is this doesn't apply to leisure travel. So even if you want to do a short holiday somewhere, assuming that you can find a country that's willing to take you in, sorry, that's not going to be allowed. I don't think you can even go to Batam to wakeboard. I'm sorry. All right. But even for the essential travel portion, we are still waiting for further details from the authorities. So what we are hearing from the authorities is that they are going to have some kind of fast track there's going to be some fast track system for us to travel to countries with a similar arrangement, but we're still waiting for the details. Okay, I'm going to segue for a moment because I see that there's a question from Tris Xavier on whether the religious activities, or rather the limited opening of religious activities, means that big services would not be allowed. My answer, yes, that is my sense. For those of you who have been attending religious services online, for example, You can expect that to continue for the foreseeable future. It's just that if you feel the need to physically attend at the place of worship for your religious activities, you may be able to do so, but within the restrictions that I just mentioned. So that was number 7. And then we just talked about number 8, which was how essential travel will be allowed. Let's move on. Number 9. And number 9 is going to be a callback to something else I mentioned, all right? So number 9 is hair salons can now provide all services. So prior to this, you could go and get a basic haircut from your hair salon, but you couldn't get, for example, a bleaching treatment, a color treatment. But from now on, all that is allowed. But this really brings me to another point, which is if you can have any kind of hair treatment at hair salons, why then are you not allowed to go for treatments at aesthetics surgeries, for example? Why are you not allowed to go for medical treatment that is purely for aesthetics? Because hair treatment is also purely for aesthetics, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't think getting a hair treatment is something that affects someone's health or livelihood. Well, I'm not sure. And the thing is, if you want to say, okay, well, we should allow all hair salons to resume all services because we want to open up our economy, because we want to let them resume business and start generating revenue, excuse me, um, wouldn't the same apply to all your aesthetics medical clinics as well? They too have employees who are wondering whether their jobs are secure. They too have doctors who deserve to be employed as much as anyone. They too have rent to pay. They too have business expenses. There are also businesses that deserve to be supported. So if you ask me, there's a bit of a contradiction here. Why you allow hair salons, but not aesthetics clinics. But unfortunately, from a policy point of view, it's always a bit difficult to get sympathy for aesthetics doctors who are perceived in a certain way, right? So I don't know. I feel for you guys, and I hope that that strange exception is lifted soon for aesthetics. Finally, okay, and this is a big one for those of us who care for our families. From now on, senior citizens can receive up to 2 visitors a day, but these 2 visitors must be from the same household. So what this means is, if you have a senior citizen, like your parents or your grandparents, for example, prior to the lifting of the circuit breaker, the rule was that you could only visit them for a short time to drop off essentials or to check on their well-being. But the rule now is that you can visit them, 2 of you can visit them a day, and there appears to be no restriction on the amount of time you can spend there. So, for the grandparents or parents who have a large group of children, you're probably going to have to come up with some kind of duty roster. Like, for example, I know a particular big family. The grandfather is living with one set of siblings. So the other siblings would have to take turns to come down with a weekly roster, I suppose, to hang out with and spend time with the grandfather. So that's the other thing though, which is the visitors cannot be any relatives. The visitors can only be children or grandchildren, which again leads to a situation, right? Because what if you have an elderly person who has no children or grandchildren, but has siblings, nephews, nieces? So the good news is that MOH has stated that for such folks who do not have children or grandchildren, they can appeal. And my understanding is that the appeal is to allow their siblings or their nephews and nieces to come and visit them. I'm not sure if the exception will be lifted for more remote relatives like cousins, for example. I mean, for those in some of our parents' generation who used to live in a kampong, they may still have a wide community that's not strictly limited just to their immediate family. But my hope is that MOH will exercise some discretion on this front because let's face it, this human contact is integral and important to their mental health being also. So let's summarize the 10 things that are now changing that you can now do now that we are going into phase 1. Number 1, childcare is now allowed. Number 2, back to school for students. Number 3, more healthcare services will be open. Number 4, more public service counters will be open. Number 5, home renovation work can resume. you can't start new home renovation work, you can service your aircon. Number 6, property and insurance agents can now meet clients if it's legally required to complete a transaction. Number 7, some religious activities will be allowed. Number 8, essential travel may be allowed, subject to us getting more details. Number 9, hair salons can provide all services. And number 10, seniors can now receive visitors. Okay, so if you're like me, you are looking at this list and you're going, okay, some of these things apply to me, some of them don't apply to me. But I thought when I saw the news, it seems like there's not much that's changed, right? I think there are a lot of things that I still can't do. That's right. So as a bonus, I have a list of 10 things that remain the same even after the end of the circuit breaker period. You still can't do these things. Oh, and before I go into all these things, remember, none of this is legal advice. None of these represents the views of my firm. If you want more details, look for me privately. So, the 10 things that have not changed, all right, even though we are moving from circuit breaker into phase 1. Number 1, everyone still has to work from home. Now, I know that this is something that has led to some controversy across the board because we are hearing reports of employers expecting their employees to come in when the employees have already been working from home during the circuit breaker period. So, MWM has come out and has been quite clear on this. As long as the employee is able to work from home, the employee has to continue working from home, and the only situation in which the employee is allowed to come into the office is if there is something that needs to be done in the office that cannot be done at home. I'll give you an example. Let's say let's say you're an employee in a manufacturing line. Okay, that's kind of obvious because if you're in the manufacturing line, you need to go into the factory or the office to use the machines, right? So there's no way that you can be using the machines at home. So that's pretty clear cut. The exception applies and work from home no longer applies to you. Okay, but what if you are in a desk-bound office job, you have a PC at home, you don't need any specialized proprietary software to do your work. Maybe some of you have even been issued laptops from your companies. The long and short of it is that work from home does continue for you, even if your boss wants you to be back in the office purely to, for I don't know, keep an eye on you, or maybe your boss just thinks that you are going to be more efficient in your office. Well, I wouldn't recommend it because MOM is quite clear that is not justification, and MOM has indicated that there will be random spot checks. So if the officers come around and the employee cannot give a good reason why the work they are doing in the office cannot be done at home, there may be consequences. So that's the first biggie. Work from home will still continue for better or worse. Second thing, and this is again more for the parents who are concerned about their children's grades, tuition centers are still closed. So what's been happening for tuition centers is that my understanding is that there's been a lot of online and video conferencing style tuition going on. That will continue. Face-to-face tutoring is still not allowed. I suppose, you could talk about how living through COVID is a learning experience and how we shouldn't be too worried about specific grades. But I can't really say that because my kid is still a bit young, so it doesn't really apply to me, so I'm not going there, alright? But that's number 2. Tuition centers still remain closed. Number 3, most retail outlets, including F&B, will remain closed. So just because the circuit breaker has been lifted, don't expect to be able to enjoy the full range of F&B that you used to be able to. Don't expect to be able to go shopping. Your bars, your pubs, your clubs, those are still going to remain closed. And for those of you who are wondering, bubble tea stores will still remain closed. You know and I know that there are some stores that don't sell only bubble tea and they fall under some kind of exception. And so you can still pack or take away your bubble tea from those places. So that continues, all right? But let's face it, given that the typical Singaporean pastime is to go to a mall, and that has been severely curtailed because of the circuit breaker, don't expect that to change. You are not going to be hanging out at the mall anytime in the near future. So that's number 3. Number 4, and this just sucks, okay, because it's just continuing the same theme. Cinemas will continue to be closed, theaters will continue to be closed, even museums will continue to be closed. So I'm sorry, you're not allowed to have fun. You need to find a way to have fun within your own household with your Netflix or hanging out with your family, right? That will continue. That's number four. Number five, and I have hinted at this earlier already. If you have if you want to start renovation work that didn't start before the circuit breaker, I'm sorry, you're out of luck. That would still continue to be prohibited. And my understanding from the industry, right, is that even if this was not prohibited, even this was allowed, you're going to have a bit of a difficulty because there is a massive backlog going on in the construction and in the renovation industry. So I did a little talk on this with my good friend James. If you check my Facebook or you check my LinkedIn, you will see a link to the video that we previously did. But the quick summary is that all the construction and renovation firms are facing a serious backlog because from 100% of their workforce out there in action, they have dropped down to just 5% during this circuit breaker period. And what MOM has said is that they are only going to allow them to gradually return to work, and they expect the figure of 5% to increase to just 10% over the course of the next month. And the reality is that you are going to have a manpower crunch, you are going to have a materials crunch, and you are going to have to assume that for your projects which haven't started, your contractors or your renovation folks may simply not have the capacity to start a new project when they have ongoing projects that they need to finish and when they have clients who are complaining and demanding that they finish. So I'm sorry, if you want to get started on the new renovation project, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So that was number five, right? Number six, and this is again a callback to my friends who are property agents. You know who you are. I'm sorry, physical property viewings are still not going to be allowed. So, I mean, if you are lucky, you can be like the agent who transacted those property sales sight unseen that have been making the news in the last few weeks. But the reality is that the usual way of conducting your property transactions, which is to bring your clients out to see a few properties, sometimes in the span of one day, compare and contrast, do a table, that's still not going to be allowed. I know some agents who have also been very active in organizing virtual tours of the properties. That can continue. But I also know that for a lot of potential homeowners, they want to be there to see, to feel. So unfortunately, that's still a no-go for now. So that's number six. Number seven, and this is a big deal for many of us, you still can't meet your friends. So we all know that the main thing that everyone got annoyed about the circuit breaker period was you can't hang out with anyone outside of your household. In other words, you can't meet your friends for coffee, you can't meet them for a pint, you just can't hang out with people from outside your household period. Unfortunately, putting aside the grandparents and parents exception I mentioned earlier, that will continue. You still cannot meet up and hang out with your friends. And this includes meeting up with your friends for exercise. So I know what a lot of you are thinking. A lot of people, they go for a run and then they happen to bump into a friend, and it's not like they arranged to meet there, they just happen to bump into each other, and then they have a little chat and they hang out for a while with safe distancing, before they all go home. So that's fine if it's a complete coincidence, but if you've actually arranged to meet with a friend, that's a no-go. It was a no-go during the circuit breaker. It continues to be a no-go even during phase one, right? So don't get into trouble for something like this. So that's number seven. Number eight. So I was saying just now about how essential travel may now be allowed, but leisure traveling will still not be allowed. So unfortunately, this also applies to staycations. So I'm sorry, I know that for some of you, you are absolutely bouncing off the walls now. You need a change of scenery, or maybe you are living in a small and cramped household and you can't take it anymore. You really need a break. You just want to have a 2 days, one night staycation somewhere and just get some personal space, some respite. I'm sorry, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. you will not be allowed to go for a staycation even within Singapore, even on Sentosa or what have you. So that's still 8. And while we're on the topic of leisure, that's number 9. Unfortunately, your spas, your massages, your facials, your manicures, all of these will still not be allowed. So I'm sorry, I know some of you are really looking forward to getting a massage, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. For the ladies or even the gentlemen among us who feel that you really need a manicure because your nails are in a shocking state, you are going to have to DIY for a bit longer and continue to rock that lockdown look. Finally, number 10, the one thing that doesn't change at all, which is really, really, really crucial for all of us, is you still have to wear a mask every time you step out of the house. Okay, so this is non-negotiable. Now, I get a lot of questions about this. If I am just going to my car, do I need to wear a mask? I mean, in a car, no need to wear a mask, right? Well, the answer is, strictly speaking, you do have to wear a mask the moment you step out of your house, and this includes walking to your car, especially if your car is in the car park. I mean, if you're lucky enough to live in a property and you have the car literally parked within your property and you don't have to do that, fine. But I don't know how many of us can say that. Um, the funny thing though is, so we know that we're supposed to wear masks on public transport. But one of the pieces of information that has come out from MOH is that you are not supposed to wear a face shield on public transport. You have to wear a mask on public transport. So I don't really know the rationale. I don't really know the difference between a face shield and a face mask in terms of preventing the spread of COVID-19. But do take note, you will need a mask if you are going on public transport. Also, if you are wearing a mask, for crying out loud, wear the mask properly. Don't get into trouble for something like this. So what it means to wear a mask properly is cover both the nose and the mouth. Some people cover the mouth only, they don't cover the nose. That's not allowed. Some people, even better, they cover the chin only. Hello, if you cover your chin with the mask, it's not going to stop you from spreading droplets, right? So wear the mask properly. Again, if you've gone to the trouble of bringing and wearing the mask, don't get caught and be issued a warning, a fine, or a fine for something silly like this. So that was number 10 of the things that remain the same even though we are moving into phase 1 of the reopening. So again, the 10 things that remain the same. Number 1, we are still all on work from home. Number 2, tuition centers remain closed. Number 3, most retail, F&B, bars, clubs, pubs all remain closed. Bubble tea as well. Number 4, no cinemas, theaters, museums, you're not allowed to have fun. Number 5, no new renovation projects. Number 6, no physical property viewings. Number 7, you still can't meet your friends, I'm afraid. Number 8, no staycations. Number 9, no spas, massages, facials, or manicures. And number 10, keep on wearing your mask. So y'all been great. I see that there's been a lot of engagement and a lot of questions coming in. And Yuan is absolutely right. Let's all hang in there a little longer. My theory, or rather the information that's filtered out, is that if we all abide by the rules and fingers crossed the transmission rates continue to remain low, we can hopefully move into phase 2 rather than phase 1 sooner rather than later. So let's keep our fingers crossed for that. But until then, most importantly, stay safe, continue to tell your loved ones that you love them, and be cool to each other, alright? You all been great. Let's do this another time.